I have been putting a spotlight on XDC for quite some time now, and more recently I've been getting more and more bullish on XDC simply because we are now watching some pretty big announcements are being made around XDC and a lot of improvements around things that were at some point in time a problem. Like, for an example, the market opportunity. There was almost no way to buy XDC in a very easy way up until recently. And in a previous video, I was talking about the listing spree that happened around XDC. You guys probably remember we were talking about how, BitTap listed XDC, LA Token listed XDC, PioNext listed XDC, and even BTSE listed XDC. Well, this seems to be continuing. We're now even witnessing additional names lining up and listing XDC. MGBX, for an example, lists XDC. This is a pretty large exchange, over almost 200,000 followers. On top of that, BitBaby Exchange. Now, this is a smaller name, obviously, only like 7,900 followers. But again, it's more listings around XDC. I mean, you got to remember that most of these announcements happened in like the last week. It's crazy to think about. Like, guys, we just witnessed 6 exchange listings for XDC in a single week. Before that, I think 6 exchange listings happened for XDC in like maybe 3-4 years. So something is happening here where, we're watching as XDC really starts to take over in a big way. And there's a lot of big updates happening in the ecosystem as well, and around the ecosystem that we have to talk about in this video as well. But before we really officially dive on in, I just want to make sure that you guys know and that you guys are aware that DCENT is having a Black Friday sale. This won't last long. This is the largest sale of the year. You won't be able to get a 40% off sale on DCENT Wallet until next year. So if you guys do want to get a DCENT wallet and store your crypto and secure it completely, now is the best time to lock in on this. You could save up to 40% on the 2x package or 30% on the single package. For an extra $80, I don't think that it is, worth forgetting the 2x package. Like, I would argue that this is probably the best opportunity here, outside of like the single, because again, you can have multiple wallets. You could set up multiple cold storage devices to have that diversified security, which I always think is way better than just having a single device. But also, maybe you already have a decent wallet. Well, hey, if you have somebody in the family, or maybe you have a friend that's in crypto, this is the best time to lock in and get them a gift for the holiday season. So if you guys do want to go and check this out, there's going to be links down in the description below, as well in the pinned comment in the comment section as well. Now, beyond that, let's dive on in. And let's start off with the big announcement with Crystal Intelligence. So this is a pretty big announcement because it is telling us, and it's really focusing on institutional adoption. We have here from XDC Network, scaling institutional adoption through stronger compliance infrastructure. Crystal Platform, a global blockchain analytics and compliance firm, has officially integrated the XDC network into its monitoring platform. What this means: enhanced compliance and risk analytics for XDC, support for tokenized RWAs, US Treasuries, and trade finance assets, strengthened trust for institutional adoption, coverage for XDC's ecosystem of 175 plus enterprise applications. This integration supports XDC's mission to deliver secure, transparent, and regulated ready blockchain infrastructure for global finance. Think about how crazy that is. 175 plus enterprise applications. But the main thing that I'm looking at here is institutional adoption. It almost feels as if all of these utility-based networks are now focused on one thing, and that's institutional adoption. But do you blame them? It's at a time where the biggest wave around crypto at this moment is institutional players diving in and locking in some use cases around specific things like tokenization, stablecoin initiatives, and much more. So I do think that these utility networks are prepared for the next wave here, which will be increased institutional adoption and use of the underlying platforms. The last thing that we're waiting for is the Clarity Act to go live. And I think once that happens, well, these networks are going to see increased adoption from the institutional side. Now, on top of that, this comes at a time where we just witnessed one of the biggest announcements with XDC, which we recently put a spotlight on, which was with AIMA, AIMA. Now, I want to bring this up again because Tokenizer put out a great post regarding this. He said, safe to say XDC is in some elite company after the recent addition to the AIMA, the Alternative Investment Management Association. In practice, this organization is perfect for the XDC ecosystem as a whole. This is a global policy and standards body for the alternative investment industry. But what exactly are alternative investments? Commodities, real estate, private credit, private equity. But these are just some examples. Our alternative assets and investments make up some of the biggest aspects of trade finance. Invoice receivables, trade receivables, purchase order financing, commodity-backed loans, electronic bill of ladings, short-term exporting loans. As we could see, these are all areas that we've already seen XDC Network progress in and bring on chain with their tokenization partners. There's a reason that XDC has been selected in this group alongside global giants. As enterprise DLT continues merging with trade finance, alternative markets will require the proper standards to operate at scale. And it simply makes sense to bring in one of the largest public DLT infrastructures making this a digital reality. And that DLT is none other than XDC Network. And these are the names that are sponsored partners of AIMA. We have a few big ones like State Street, PwC. We also even have Ernst & Young, KPMG's on here as well. A lot of these names are already in and around the crypto space. And then you have a few other ones on here as well. But the reason why I bring this back up is because of what got shared recently on my timeline from CryptoNair D regarding XDC. And we have here XDC Network's tokenized RWA breakdown. So if we're going back to this, right, these are all of the alternative investments, especially around trade finance, securities, invoice and receivables, commodities, bills of lading, promissory notes. This is all based around a total on-chain value of about roughly $625 million. And right now, if you go and look at RWA.xyz, I mean, guys, XDC has less than roughly like $15 million in value tied back to it in terms of tokenized value. I have been putting a spotlight on how we are seeing an increased, transfer volume around our RWAs on XDC. However, the total RWA value tied back to XDC is extremely small compared to what it is really focused on. And I think that this is one of the biggest things that I think everyone's kind of missing when it comes back to some of these networks is like, yeah, sure, the tokenized value is very small. However, there's a lot of announcements that have yet to hit these networks. I'm still waiting on that major announcement with, I forgot who it was, but it was like $500 million in Brazil that XDC announced back in like April of this year. That has yet to hit the public network. But also, when we go back to these values, yeah, a lot of this will be moving on chain. And I do think that XDC is right at the forefront of it, with it being fully focused on trade finance in a huge way. But also, we just got a big announcement from XDC that said $75 million in tokenized assets on the XDC network, a landmark for Brazil's RWA market. Burt Capital and UISA have completed the first issuance of their new partnership on the XDC network, kicking off a multi-year strategy to tokenize $1 billion in Brazilian real-world assets. The issuance, tokenized on agribusiness receivables certificate, now fully trackable on a public blockchain offering daily transparency, lifecycle auditability, and regulatory compliance. Issuance breakdown. So $75 million across 4 series, maturities up to 6 years, backed by UISA's agro-industrial receivables, recorded on the XDC network, aligned with CVM resolution 60 and 160. And UISA is a major Brazilian agro-industrial leader producing sugar, ethanol, energy, and bioproducts, processing 6 million plus tons of sugarcane annually, and also has a 3 billion, and I think that this is Brazilian reals, plan for biogas, carbon capture, and sustainability driven initiatives or innovation. So this is actually pretty big because, their total planned value here is we're talking about almost $750 million, which is pretty significant. But this is a big update and it's a huge initiative based around XDC. So we love to see this. I mean, $75 million. You got to remember that right now, there's not even like we're barely scratching the surface of like $20 million on chain for XDC. So just imagine what this would do for the tokenized market on XDC. I'm very excited about this. I think that this is incredible. And again, we have a few quotes here already in the announcement. So let me open this up real quick and let me zoom in just so that you guys can see. So we have this issuance is a milestone for Brazil's capital markets and for the global XDC ecosystem. Seeing a CRA tokenized with on-chain traceability on a public blockchain represents the real convergence of sustainability, financial innovation, and operational transparency. UISA and VERT are showing the world how Brazil can lead the digital transformation of traditional markets using institutional-grade infrastructure. We also have this issuance brings together two key dimensions of blockchain adoption, operational transparency, and financial innovation. By recording lifecycle events of a CRA directly on chain, we are increasing traceability for investors while strengthening the link between sustainable production and its financing. Yeah, I mean, this is a huge announcement. And again, like I said, when it comes back to some of these networks, like the total on-chain value right now, I think it's so incorrect. I don't think that it's tracked properly. I really wish that there was a way to see it fully tracked in real time. But this is definitely a great announcement. It's a huge one, and it reinforces some of the recent announcements that we already saw around XDC in a big way. So I'm very happy about this. I think that this is great. And on top of that, DeFi. So with institutional grade adoption, I do think that institutional DeFi is the next stage here in this market. And we already know that DeFi on XDC has been increasing in a big way. We have over here from the head of growth from XDC. XDC's TVL is increasing regardless market's price situation and volatility. 20 million so far in TVL and climbing. Surge program Epic 001 proves that there is demand from liquidity pools to get into the chain, led by Curve Finance, XSwap Protocol, and Oku Trade, with a combined gain of over $7 million. The majority of deposited assets are in USDC, S-Curve USD, Wrapped XDC, and CGO, respectively, which shows one of the first instances of traction of stablecoins, especially USDC, on the network. I'm so bullish on the next epochs when money markets start to get deployed on the network and further one-click deposit RWA vaults with DeFi exposure. RWA is a market, and its landscape is insane and huge. We aim to make XDC the primary settlement layer and infrastructure for private credit, and with different risk tiers as developed by Casu Finance and other partners to be announced. We're on the third week of the Surge program. Next week, we will probably have an RWA surprise, not financial advice, all personal opinion. And I think that this might be that announcement that he was talking about. But also, Casu Finance did say, since XDC Network invested in Casu, we've been working very hard behind the scenes to set up the rails for the XDC ecosystem of users to have seamless access to Casu's industry-leading yields. So it seems as though there's going to be some pretty big announcements. And already we did see from Token Terminal that USDC on XDC has been growing in a big way. This is what we currently have right now in the XDC landscape of DeFi. So TVL is definitely up in a big way. We can see that big jump from October all the way to now. 21 plus million, almost $22 million. We've been seeing stablecoins really grow as well. Right now, over $32 million. Most of that is USDC, I would assume. Let me just check real quick. Yeah, USDC dominance 95+%. But again, you know, we are watching some significant adoption is happening around XDC, especially from some of these protocols. We could see some of the protocols gaining in a big way. If we're tapping in terms of like TVL, also, you know, locking in on the, you know, liquid staking and some of these RWAs. I mean, the overall landscape here for XDC is pretty big in terms of DeFi TVL. It's hard to say for certain just how much money is in some of these DeFi networks because, again, a lot of the tracking is just not up to date. But this is a very good start. I would love for us to get back to some of these highs going back to like January of the year, which is close to like $40 million. I think that DeFi across the board for a lot of these networks, once we start to see, and let's go back to this post, right? Once we start to see, you know, RWA exposure and money markets hitting these networks, that's going to be the real test to see just how big DeFi can be in this space. Because right now, most of the DeFi protocols that we have is just simply like lending protocols or like just yield generation protocols. When we start to have DeFi pools tied back to institutional players, and then we also have DeFi pools tied back to RWAs and money market funds and things like that, that's the big move. That's where we start to see legitimization of DeFi in this space, which I'm very excited about. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because there's more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, this has been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.